Want to let anyone who's listening know that today is none other than Wednesday, the 14th of December. This is Day 9 Daily, number 388, where we learn to be a better gamer. And the Twitch TV channel that streams to you, Day 9 TV, has just hit 20 million views. 20 million unique individuals have clicked upon twitch.tv/Day9TV and tuned in live. Yeah, fusion core dancing all damn day, hitting the GG button, feeling good about that. And what I was doing in the middle of the 20 millionth view was playing Text Twist. So, you know what? This happens, but the important thing that you should know is that I never lose at Text Twist. Boss mode. Now, of course, it's important that we review a little bit of what we're going to talk about today before briefly touching on some announcements and then just going into the damn daily. Originally, we were going to be doing Xenio's Zerg vs. Protoss. However, I'm dumb. Team Liquid sent me a replay pack of Xenio's private replay saying if you want to do whatever with these, that would be fine. So whatever for me is doing a damn daily about them. And it never dawned on me that there would not be any Protoss ones in it. Some great Zerg vs. Terran and Zerg vs. Zerg games, but I just kind of assumed there was Protoss ones in there. But there aren't. Unfortunately, I'll have to be introducing to you Stephano's Zerg vs. Protoss. Oh, and this game is going to be so good. It's from IPL, his games against Inori, who's playing under the ID Obsidian. We're going to be spending some time talking about how his opening is so genius, how he transitions to a mid-game with some clear plans, some clear junk going on, and even when that clear plan falls through, he has a follow-up plan that is equally brilliant. So, what we're going to do now is briefly state the announcements coming up. I don't know if there is that many announcements. There's going to be a very big special one tomorrow about a special promotion for the holidays coming up, but you have to wait till tomorrow. Fun Day Monday for next week. Submit to Monday at day9.tv the closest game you have ever played with a short description. And it had better be close. Really close. And it's not a game where you're both just sitting there and it's boring and at the end one of you wins by a small margin. That is not a close game. I'm talking about games where when the match finishes, both of you are under 10 food. That's what I'm talking about. A game where no bases are being mined from for like 10 minutes at some point. I'm talking about unbelievably nail-bitingly close elimination races where one person eliminates the other by a nanosecond. That is what I'm looking for. Yes, submit those to Monday at day9.tv. And without any further ado, I think we're just going to hop into the Stephano games. You'll notice that all the hues, my face, the walls, this Day 9, is in yellow. Therefore, this blue cup looks really blue. Look at it. This is just like the nectar of life in my otherwise yellow, deserty room. Color is so cool. For any of you who didn't know this, here's just random fact. Random fact before we get started. Your eye has a tendency to white balance things. So whatever you're looking at, if I'm in like a really yellow room, my eye will adjust the color until that looks white to me. And so as a result, when you step into another environment, the colors look really different. Like if you're outside on a really, really, really bright day playing and you come inside, everything looks a little blue. The natural result of your eye white balancing. So this is why in all those World War II style movies, it's always tinted really green. Like really, really green, because over time, your eye adjusts that to be looking normal. And then when you see blood, it looks really red. Like extremely freaking very, very red. It's a really cool effect to make the blood be like, oh, really visually startling. Cool, right? In exciting news, I will not be spewing blood, but I will be drinking from a cup that's blue. Not quite as exciting. Cool. Let's hop into this game with Millennium Stephano against your average bear, Inori. Few things look more average than Inori. Oh, I'm kidding. He's really Gosu. Millennium Stephano, of course, enthusiastic because he's about to win IPL 3 at the time of this game. He is en route to that. We have Obsidian in the bottom right corner. This game is a smidge of a bit old, but that is fine. We're going to see some smart things out of Obsidian, per expectation, as he's just really damn good. We're going to see the smartest things in the whole wide world out of Stephano. The first half of this daily, or I should say the first part, since it is 3 parts, the first part of this daily, I want to talk a lot about the opening stages of Zerg vs. Protoss. Now, there are a couple of things that you always end up getting. For instance, one of them is going to be Zergling speed. That is something that you just generally get in this matchup. And there it is going down. On this map, I want all of you to think about the pro replays you have seen on Shakura's Plateau. Protoss is going to early expand, and what does Zerg do? They take this base, and then they take this base, right? Just visualize for a little bit. I'm going to take my glasses off, I'm going to close my eyes. Okay, the Zerg player, he normally takes 3 bases, and he begins powering really hard, making a lot of drones. What do Protosses do? Maybe they'll do some Void Ray harass, maybe they'll go for some early thirds themselves, some big gateway pushes, these sorts of things. All big variety that Zerg needs to worry about. And what Zerg generally sort of says strategically is, I'm going to get 3 bases, defend with Spore Crawlers and lots of Roaches. Those are going to be my 2 units that I'm going to withstand your aggression with. Prepositions everywhere. But notice some very subtle readjustments that we're going to see Stephano do. First of all, very normal, typical, expected spawning pool goes down. A geyser goes down. This is kind of typical for someone who's going to be going for Zergling speed. Stephano, just trying to do a little bit of distractioning. And when you see this opening, you generally think, oh yeah, that guy's going to be going for Ling speed. And of course, we're going to see Stephano finally playing down the hatchery. That's so good. Has 3 guys in the geyser. Everything seems pretty normal at this point. Amen. Stephano's going to pull 2 guys out of this gas geyser. Or pull 1 guy out of this gas geyser, leaving 2. Now let's put some numbers in the can, shall we? Ordinarily, if you get this pool, and then you just build this hatch, you can generally sneak in another hatchery a little bit before the 4-minute mark. That's a pretty typical timing, maybe a little afterwards. If you build the second queen, you can normally build this hatchery by the 5-minute mark. Pretty expected. Both of those variants, where you get the hatch around 4 minutes here and 5 minutes here, involve absolutely no gas. And here's the Zergling speed coming up. Again, this is one of these things that you would just very ordinarily expect a Zerg player to just get. People kind of go into default mode when this sort of thing ends up occurring. Here's the usual scouting all around the fringes. Killing stuff off, looking good. Second queen coming up, looking good. And it's at this point when you're almost certain of what your Protoss buddy is doing. Stephano hasn't scouted the wall off. He doesn't actually need to scout the wall off. It's not actually really that pivotal in any way. It's not going to affect too much. If a Nexus is down, that defines all the timings that could possibly come up. So we're quite content with this. And notice we're a little bit after the 5-minute mark. This is right around the time when we ordinarily would be wanting to build that lovely hatchery. Yeah, I would describe it as a little bit late. And this little gas ends up finishing, or this upgrade ends up finishing. This is going to give us some control over the space of the map. When these sorts of zealots or probes walk their way in, we can easily use our Zergling speeds to shut them down. This is a super typical style. The thing that really sort of excited me, though, is that Stephano, at this point in time, is going to be getting his layer up pretty damn quickly. He puts his guys back in gas right the minute that he ends up getting this spawning pool finished up on the Zergling speed. And the layer should be popping down any second now. There we go. Very, very often you will see Zergs favoring building an evolution chamber a little early. That way they can get upgrades. You will see them focusing a little bit more on droning, focusing a little bit more on getting this hatchery up, so that way they can get maximum number of drones. I want you to stop and think about this thus far. Okay, so this little pool guy going down, right? This guy getting himself up a Zergling speed, this is expected. Getting this first hatchery up is expected. This, you'd expect to be a little bit earlier on, but this layer is a nice early layer. And we're not getting the usual 3 gas, we're getting just 2. There's usual precautionary measures that Stephano is taking, which is to get a good amount of Zerglings up, just to, defend against the zealots that are coming in. It's not going to get too many. Be sure you don't go nuts. I actually think this is a few too many. But I suppose when you're in the heat of the moment at a tournament, I can understand someone pressing ZZZZZ. But get out of that habit. Stephano, very smartly, does not abandon the central watchtowers. This is something very often you'll see players do. They'll see the zealots here, and then they'll grab the Zerglings and just box them back here. Stephano, he's a little bit too good for that. And this is actually the biggest key that is going to allow you to figure out how many drones you should make. Keep vision in that center area. Also note, we haven't seen Stephano suicide his way in yet. Same with Mr. Overlords up here. No suiciding in. No third geyser either. A lot of people know this just general number in their heads. If you have 3 geysers, you can support roaches being produced off 2 hatcheries. And though that is true, Stephano still doesn't seem to be doing that. He still seems to be just sticking to these 2 gas geysers. Stephano's suddenly going to spring forward with just a lot of everything. He's getting a lot of drones, and then suddenly, when his layer is halfway done, and by the way, I love timings like that way more. Right around here, being like, oh yeah, layer's about halfway done. You just keep, selecting your hatches, keep selecting, and you see, oh yeah, halfway done. Plop down Evolution Chamber and Roach Warren. And this is going to allow Stephano to get a whole bunch of roaches to control the mid game. But I want to pause right here at 7 minutes and 40 seconds and just note some of the differences between what Stephano is doing and what everyone else is doing. What everyone else tends to do is to think of Zerg as this gigantic mass race. I don't mean like from the narrative point of view. I mean like players who are playing think, gotta build a lot of drones, so that way I can get a lot of roaches. And they're getting all tongue twisted and all that sort of jazz. But what's most interesting to me is when there's that, when players are thinking with that granularity about what is really helping me. And when I watch a player like Rhett play this matchup, or even Dignitas's Killer, who I was casting at the Latin American Invitational, you'll see them get those 3 hatches up on this map quite quickly, and then just blast out a ton of drones, getting so freaking many drones, and then they'll eventually get the layer and eventually get a lot of roaches, and you'll see them rush for getting burrow. And when the attack ends up coming, they're hoping to have huge numbers. Instead, what Stephano's doing is that when the attack is coming out, he's hoping to have the key upgrades for his roaches that I really like. That's what kind of turns me on about this way that Stephano's playing this out. Just 2 extractors, getting the upgrades quite quickly. Often when you see players get gas and pool early on, they'll get the Zergling speed quickly, but this gas geyser is just sort of treated as almost non-existent. People don't think in terms of, well, if I get fast Zergling speed, then I have an opportunity to suddenly decide to get some fast tech up as well. So that is one nice flexible component that I'm seeing Stephano do here. And as a matter of fact, one additional thing to note, for anyone who does like to go for this, hatch and then expand, and skip this gas geyser, often it's completely appropriate to get the layer up before the Zergling speed. This is another way of saying to yourself, I'm not going to be using all these quick Zerglings for defense, I'm instead going to be relying more on roaches with speed for defense. In terms of some basic timings, you'll note that even with a couple chrono boosts, the big warp gate attacks only really start picking up towards you at around 8 minutes and 30 seconds. That's one of those very important timings to know about, because at this point Stephano is essentially comfortable. Really cool stuff. Again, Stephano is not having the usual massive amount of drones. I mean, Rhett is actually capable of getting the full 75 drones that he wants all game long, really early. But most of the gas for Stephano, no, he is going to be spending on getting these upgrades. Now, it's important to realize how this relates to your mineral income. Notice that we're starting our third queen at the third hatch. Very frequently, you'll see players who go for the triple expand. You'll see them get all 3 queens up before doing else much, so that way they can have maximum injects. But Stephano is not thinking in that, man, I really hope I get enough economy up. That's really going to help. Right off the bat, he's just going to begin making some roaches. He's only just seen some warp gates here, so that kind of gives him a little bit of an idea. No suiciding in, no exact measurement of what his opponent's up to. And still just these 2 gas geysers, making 10 roaches right now. And of course, the usual spot-on injects, sort of trademark of pretty much every super incredibly good Zerg. But just churning out a lot of roaches. And now we're going to see the attack begin by Inori. He's moving out. Because again, around 8 minutes and 30 seconds, your warp gate finishes up. You warp, then you warp in. Also, just to note, the upgrade, like the transition to the warp gate, and the amount of time it takes to warp in a unit is pretty significant when timings start to kick in. Like this. But this roach speed is just barely going to be ready to go in time. And there's some usual precautions, getting a spore crawler up. We see another spore crawler, or we see just a single spore crawler in production. And what I love so much about this sort of play that we're seeing out of Stephano is this is what I call an economy that times itself. Should I be making Zerglings or Roaches? Well, what you do is you just get 2 geysers and then make as many Roaches as you can, and when you're out of gas, you get Zerglings. Cool. Alright, excellent, we get it. And now we're going to see Stephano really step into aggression right off the bat. He's immediately comfortable engaging this force until a bunch of stalkers end up warping in. That's the only thing that can really delay him. So notice already the different feel that this has from a usual Zerg vs. Protoss game. In a usual Zerg vs. Protoss game, we see a Zerg a little bit more trying to get more drones out. Stephano, though, is instead trying to get his speed out and upgrades, and then get some units out, and suddenly he's seized control of the game. He's really saying, yeah, Protoss, you better have a lot of ground units to try to move down here. Protoss will almost be guaranteed to take this expansion at some point. But now, all of a sudden, we're having to see Inori. Wow, he has to warp in a whole slew of stalkers. He's not going to be able to get that so easily. Stephano is literally just hanging out here at the third base. Has to be a little bit careful. You don't want to camp here, because what if units come in and just trap you and cut you off? You want to kind of have control of this open space, but nothing but units still out of Stephano. Huge amount of units being produced. And just takes himself a 4th base as his money starts to go up. It's an economy that times itself. As we're seeing now, Stephano is going to be getting a 3rd extractor. Very many Zergs will have 3, sometimes even 4 extractors up, or if you're really going apeshit, 5 extractors, so that way you can end up getting, you know, some infestors in there pretty quickly. Maybe you have a 2nd evolution chamber planned. But in terms of this timing itself, it's just been Roaches and Zerglings, and that's it. When we have enough gas, we build the Roaches, and then we build Zerglings with the remainder, and then with the remaining money, because we still will have some, then we just get a 4th base up. What a sexy little play we're seeing out of Stephano right now. And only now does he begin to go back to drones. Again, the big key in my eyes is the fact that he is getting Roach speed up so quickly. So quickly, not just to combat any sort of big gateway push, but also to defend against any sort of nutty early third. And of course, these 2 anti-air units defend this base from air. This and this, these 2 queens help defend the main from air with this adjoining creep. Very inexpensive way to defend against air. And of course, Roaches are there to just bring the noise at any point in time. So now we have 3 gas. Economy is continuing to time itself. This, to me, is a pretty interesting choice, just getting the Zergling attack upgrade. But I'm not trying to overthink this. He has Zerglings. He's going to be building a lot of Zerglings for the remainder of the game. he's just going to get him. +1 upgrade for Roaches to really make his Roaches fierce. I think that's pretty expected. And now he can just sort of calmly transition into all the rest of everything that he needs. Second evolution chamber for upgrades. Spire for any potential Colossus that comes out. And I want to come to the Stephano cam and again note, he has not seen anything that his opponent is doing. And this is the last little bit of information I want to leave you with before we step away and go into part number 2. Have you ever felt like it's a coin flip? Now, I don't mean logically you sit down and conclude that you are flipping a coin, but I want to know how often you've had this feeling, or if you've had this feeling, which is where you're playing and you're like, oh God, every time I build anti-air, he goes 6-gate and kills me. And every time I have a huge army ready to kill a 6-gate, a bunch of air units come in. And I can't just make the air units and then make the ground units, because then I don't have anything. That is a very common feeling that a lot of players will end up having when they have a build order that is really close to something good. In particular, a build that works brilliantly in some circumstances. And then it's those, and they feel like fringe cases. Let me give the Zerg vs Protoss example of this. The Zerg player who does go 3 base early, very low gas, very high larva count, getting as many drones as they can, and then they're just trying to get a Roach Warren and suddenly slam out lots of Roaches to defend against an early gateway push. Sometimes earlier attacks come. Oh, how am I supposed to know if he's going for any of those early attacks? Then I would have to make a whole bunch of Zerglings early on. And if he does go for a +1 upgrade, then Zerglings aren't going to be good enough. So now I need to get my Roach Warren even earlier to defend against it. But then if I do that, then an air opening really screws me over. Ugh. And there's all this sort of grody-ness. What Stefanos opening does for him is it allows him and enables him to just get Roach speed really fast and seize control in a lot of the situations where he was having trouble beforehand. What if some of those early pushes with small numbers of units come out? Well, he already got a Roach Warren early because he's getting that upgrade early. Well, what happens if a really huge army comes out later? Well, Stephano's going to have less Roaches, but they will have that fast speed upgrade, so he has much more maneuverability. What happens if he early expands? Well, I can bring the noise back to you with that push. It's that little bit of brilliance that really excited me. And this is another great way of sidestepping a lot of these coin flip type feelings, which is to be more aggressive. I really think that these speed Roaches, being more nimble, being more upgradey, definitely is what's helping him here. Always see if you can try to grab some tech, maybe sacrifice some economy in there, and hopefully you'll have some solutions there in the early game. So, as we go on to part number 2, get yourself a beverage, put on the bass, because it is time for some delightful break music beats.